Yeah, I remember that from yesterday. Perfect.
Oh yeah, it's thinking that this data comes from that. Oh, this is true. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's not me. I'll never show up. Yeah,
John, are you going to be on the whole show, or are you going to drop off?
No, I'll probably just be on for about 15.
All right.
For a second. Not yet. For a second. Still good. You want to revise your? Ooh, 0. Yes. 100 spots.
All right.
696. Wow.
All the feeds are good. All right, we got the countdown up. So whenever I leave, you guys count to 3, and then we'll go ahead and go.
Perfect.
All right. So just make sure you get the visual, like the actual counted out loud, so I can hear it whenever I need to switch the video over.
Sure.
All right. I'm leaving.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. What's going on, guys? Another exciting edition here of Grinders Live. I am CSU Ram 88, and today I am joined by Justin, St. Louis Cardinals 84, and John Aguiar, also known as Fatal Error in the industry, and obviously the VIP guy over there at DraftKings. And he has a pretty cool announcement for us. So, Legend Series has been going great so far, and we get the unveiling of the next event. So, John, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, I can't believe it was like a month ago I was on here. It feels like last week. So yeah, Legend Series continues on. This is actually our 4th Legend Series event coming up in July. We do have a lot of awesome Legend Series stuff coming up in August, including Champions Week, but this is our last standalone contest. And for those of you that like your vanilla ice cream, so to say, it's just regular big old GPP. It's a $400,000 guaranteed Midsummer Classic with $100,000 to first. Just your usual. I think Napster Man was our champion in the Midsummer Classic last year, so this is your typical GPP player contest. The guys who love to fire a lot of lineups. This is their chance to take a shot at $100,000. So that's what we're going to be rolling out. It's no showcase, it's no Survivor, but people have been asking for us to run just a regular big, single day GPP again. So that's what this 4th Legend Series event is going to be. And I just figured that's a pretty simple announcement. So what better opportunity do we have to talk about the Legend Series than we have Justin on with us tonight? And he moved on 34 teams of the 400 into day 2 of the Punch-Out. So I figured we'd talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't been playing a ton of volume the last week or so, and was not sure what the Legend Series event for July would be, so I fired off some tickets and decided to run a train. I figured, I didn't want to waste the time and effort if I happened to put in 40 unique lineups last night and advance 5 of them on or whatever. So hemmed and hawed about it throughout the day. Really liked the Tigers bats last night, and just decided to run a train and put the same entry in there with all of them, and figured if they all advanced, then I'd be committed to putting together some decent lineups for the rest of the thing. And thought I had no chance early in the night with Scott Kazmir pitching like garbage, and so I pivoted from Tim Hudson to C.J. Wilson as kind of a late swap thing, and he wasn't very good either. So I'm not sure how I managed to advance most of those with just 1 point from my pitchers, but the Tigers ended up pulling it off. Late in that game, they scored some runs, and Johnny Peralta hit a homer. So, if the Arizona game would have ended on one of the 10 chances that it had earlier, I would have advanced all of them through. But certainly not complaining about how my train fared in that. So, apologies to anyone who was close, and a few people were probably upset to get knocked out, by if they were, within a half a point or something like that. But got a little lucky. The pitching was terrible, and I kind of figured it was going to be the end of my fate for that. But I'll take it.
Yeah, a lot of people had Kazmir, so I guess that a lot of people just landed on grenades. Basically the only people that got the safe pitching points were the guys who spent on Kershaw last night. I thought it was actually a really interesting situation that they had right there with Kershaw being so much more expensive. So yeah, I mean it was 60% on Kazmir and 20% on Kershaw. So it was interesting to see how that broke out. And if you had Kershaw,
I think that's the first time I've rostered Kazmir all year too, and I was kind of surprised to see him get blown up by the Mets. But that's baseball sometimes for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. So John, I know you have a bunch of other stuff, and obviously the Punch Out went really well yesterday. I think that's been the most successful Survivor so far, and I know Cardinals had a big night, and some other guys got some entries through. So certainly going to be fun to kind of monitor that the rest of the way here. And the Midsummer Classic, I know it's kind of crazy that we've seen so many big tournaments, and it's another tournament that pays $100,000 at first, and that'll certainly be fun there in the middle of July, and then obviously Atlantis will kind of finalize things. But outside of the Legends Series, there's some other cool stuff going on at DraftKings. I know you got some golf stuff going on and some other announcements. So kind of fill us in there as well.
Yeah. So we've got an awesome WSOP promotion wrapping up. The last one is next Tuesday. Peter's going to be one of the guys joining us out in Vegas, along with the Takeover and Draft Cheat and a bunch of other really well-known Roto Grinders guys. Hopefully we'll get to see one of them take a deep run in the main event. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then also we've got some cool stuff going on with the golf. Actually, we recently just sort of partnered up with the Tiger Woods Foundation, and we're going to have a hospitality tent at the second FedEx Cup event, the Deutsche Bank Championship, which is going to be the last week before the football season starts out here in Boston. So I think we're going to do some cool stuff with that, try to get some guys from the industry out to Boston for the weekend and get them out to the course for a really great experience. Tiger Woods Foundation runs absolutely amazing events, both on their own and in partnership with the World Poker Tour. They did the Tiger Jam event a few months ago that I was lucky enough to attend, where the winner of that poker tournament got to play in a Pro-Am with Tiger, or will get to play in a Pro-Am with Tiger. So we're going to try to put together some really cool stuff on that end and really add some interesting experiences to our golf product and some stuff that people can do with that. So that's also very exciting. So yeah, while today's announcement wasn't a Legend Series event with a bunch of bells and whistles, you can rest assured that we're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff over the next few months. I think you're going to see a lot of exciting announcements from us. So it is the doldrums of the summer, but stay pumped up for the next thing you hear from DraftKings, because I'm sure we get some stuff that's going to perk people up over the next month or two.
Yeah, and I mean, and still, $100,000 first place prize just in the dog days of summer, like you alluded to in July there. That's still going to be awesome. I mean, I know I'll be going after it. I'm sure Cardinals will have a couple entries in there, so it's going to be a lot of fun to play that event. And then there's obviously just a bunch of stuff coming down the road. I personally am very excited for the Opium Championship, another tournament that pays $100,000 to first for the British Open. So it's cool. Golf is something that I think is really kind of made summer a lot better. I know I'm excited about the World Series package too, but just straight from a daily fantasy point of view, having golf to go along with baseball is huge. And I know, Justin, you've been playing golf for years now, right?
Yeah, I was one of the first people playing. I played a lot over at Draft Street, really, when they were the only site that had it. So, I got into it, probably about a year and a half ago, towards the end of 2012, I think, is when I started the end of that season. And it's great to see the sport taking off because, for all the gratification of getting a one-day payout in DFS, golf's pretty neat sometimes to have that little different animal where you can follow a team, for 4 days, and even, like smaller bankroll players, it stretches your dollar a little farther if you want to have a sweat, especially if you're near the top of a GPP. I mean, there's nothing worse than being towards the top of a big golf GPP on Saturday and then having to wait a whole day until Sunday to watch your team crash and burn and somebody pass you. But that's the nature of the beast with a 4-day setup. So I like it. I think it's a nice change of pace, and it's great to see it taken off a little bit, and DraftKings has certainly had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, John, real quick, because I know we had some technical difficulties just kind of reading through the chat here. Can you kind of just recap? I know you talked about the Midsummer Classic, the World Series of Poker, and then the golf stuff. Can you just recap that one more time? Because it sounds like there's some technical difficulties before.
All right, so for anybody that missed it, Legend Series event number 4, $400,000 guaranteed Midsummer Classic, $200 buy-in, $100,000 for first. Just your regular cookie cutter GPP with a ton of money for first. It's funny that a 400K with 100K for first is just kind of like, oh, well, that's just like a sort of cool event, you know? Like that's how far this industry has gotten. So that's our fourth Legends event. Our other big thing that we got going on is we got a WSOP main event package up on Friday, and then another one next Tuesday, which is our final one. So last opportunity to win your way into the main event through DraftKings. And and then finally we're going to be doing some really cool golf stuff. We're going to be doing more trips and more experiences, and we've got some other cool stuff we're in discussion to do right now for somebody out there who is playing on DraftKings that is a big fan of golf. We're going to have some really, really cool stuff for you, some stuff you're definitely going to want to do. So some really cool prizes out there other than just straight cash.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's really cool to see kind of the different offerings, and I was just talking about it before too. I know we had some bad audio, but golf is just a great addition. Really kind of spruces up the summer. The dog days of baseball are certainly fun for a lot of us, but it can get mentally draining, and having something different like golf has been a true blessing. So I know we've had it in the past, but DraftKings has really kind of taken it to the next level with golf. So Aguiar, that's great. We're pumped about all these events. Justin, you have any more questions or comments on this before we let Aguiar go?
No, I think the golf stuff is great. Good to see a nice big GPP offering. I know it sounds simplistic, but something, it's been different than the last couple, so it's good to see that, and variety is always good, and obviously catering to what the users have been asking for. So great to see it. Really excited for the golf stuff coming up, and keep doing what you're doing, John.
Appreciate it, guys. Good luck tonight.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Cool. So another awesome event over there at DraftKings. I know these Legends series are a lot of fun. Certainly been enjoying all the aspects of it. Cards, why don't you talk a little bit about last night a bit more? I know we had the audio issues, but you decided to run a big train, got 34 teams through, and now we're kind of towards a different aspect of the tournament now. Obviously, yesterday was not necessarily a GPP, but 25% advancing, you certainly take a little bit different strategy. So talk me through kind of what you're planning to do going forward, and how you're feeling about tonight in general.
Yeah, I didn't want to spend the 2 hours or whatever, 3 hours creating a whole bunch of teams yesterday. I had some Legends tickets that I hadn't used, and not knowing what the July event would be, I decided I better use them up for this, even though, I've cut back a little bit on my play recently. So I threw a bunch of tickets in there, and just decided I was going to run one entry. If they all made it through, great, and then I'd be fully vested in this going forward. If I got knocked out, then at least I didn't have to worry about it for the next week and a half. So that kind of spurred me to just go with the one-team strategy. Really liked the Tigers' bats last night, and then it all started with Scott Kazmir. Had a terrible performance. I know he killed a ton of you out there that had entries into that thing. And so I needed the Tigers to absolutely go off. They only had like one run through 6 innings, so I figured I was done. But luckily they got 5 in the 7th, 2 in the 8th, hit a couple homers. And the next thing I knew, I was in like 300th. And, just had to sweat out the end of a bunch of games. That Brewers game went 16 innings. The Cleveland-Arizona game went 14 innings. And, Cleveland had a lead in extra innings. Arizona only needed 1 out to close it out in the 9th. And I was just kind of steadily dropping down there. So my train basically finished right on the cut line. So I lost 9 and got 34 through of the 43 that I had. So definitely pleased about that. And now with the 34 going forward, I'm splitting them up. I'm not going to be running a huge train. Obviously, we're down to 400, and it's basically a double up now, 160 move on to the next day. So playing it a little bit differently tonight. It kind of sucks because the weather is a major issue, and you definitely want to stay tuned for Kevin Ross' forecast tonight because still to this point I have no idea what I'm going to do. There's about 4 games that are in danger out there today.
Yeah, why don't you kind of talk through the weather? I think that there's a lot of interesting things going on and some question marks here for some games that actually matter on a shorter slate. So give us kind of, I know you said you don't have a full grasp, but give kind of your initial thoughts on the weather.
Well, I read Kevin's post. here when he posted it a few minutes ago. The problem is that there's a big line of storms that's moving towards the East Coast, and we have games tonight in Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York. The question is, if there's a pop-up storm ahead of this main line, these storms are dumping heavy rain, so there's issues there. So you've got those 3 games. Who knows when it's going to rain there. Right now I think they might be okay to go, but would be worried about the starting pitchers. And the same as last night, we've got rain in Texas. I think that'll probably be fine. Kevin has that as a yellow, and that the rain now should probably clear out before the game's supposed to start. So I think Texas is the safest, but those East Coast games are probably going to come right up to first pitch. Yeah, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that's certainly something we'll monitor, and he is coming on again at 6:45, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Perfect. So definitely check that out. Really, really valuable. He's been on the money so far, and obviously a lot of us like to think we are weathermen, but Kevin certainly knows what's going on there. So definitely check that out at 6:45 Eastern Time. All right, so we have a shorter slate. Let's talk through the pitching first. A couple different options at the top. I think Iwakuma is probably not consensus, but I think overall the majority of the community has him number 1. And then Garrett Richards is certainly another guy who's right up there, along with Corey Kluber. So talk me through how you're kind of evaluating pitching and who you think the number 1 guy is.
Yeah, I don't really know if there is a number 1 tonight. I just there's nobody that I really like a whole bunch over anyone else. I think Iwakuma is solid, nice park factor pitching at home, but I don't know, just don't have the greatest feeling about him tonight. I mean, he's not a super high strikeout guy, so it's not like he's a top shelf ace going. For GPPs, I'd probably lean towards Richards a little bit more. He's been lights out this month. Ever since that start against the A's where he didn't make it out of the first inning. I said at the beginning of May that I thought this kid was an ace. Then he had a little, rough patch there, 2 or 3 bad starts in May, and he has just been on a tear in June. So I like Richards tonight, especially for GPPs. He gets a few more strikeouts. Iwakuma probably the safer option for cash games, I guess, if you were trying to specifically pick a number 1. But Richards is also a little bit cheaper on some sites, not on DraftKings. They're basically the same price. Kluber's another guy that's probably better served as a GPP option. He's hit or miss at times. Tough park to pitch in Arizona tonight. But again, that game did go 14 innings last night, so those 2 teams are going to need some innings out of their starters. So I think that is a nice upgrade for Kluber. He'll have a long leash tonight. And there's a couple more guys that you can go with, kind of in the mid-range. Matt Latos is an interesting option with the wind blowing in at Wrigley. Not as much on DraftKings where he's expensive. He's kind of right up there with the other top guys. But on FanDuel, he's a little bit cheaper. I don't mind him against the Cubs. I think some people will be on Colin McHugh again tonight. But I have a weird feeling about James Shields tonight, and I'm not really sure why. I can't really place why I do. The Dodgers lineup, they're missing Hanley Ramirez. They have Scott Van Slyke in there, who does not hit right-handers well at all. I just think that lineup profiles well for James Shields to have some success tonight. Again, another guy that I'll probably use more in tournaments, but I don't know. He's super cheap for his talent. I mean, $8,200 on DraftKings. That's a pretty good price for James Shields. So I like him as kind of a contrarian option tonight. Unfortunately, I mean, it's a tough matchup against the Dodgers, so I can't really pinpoint the specific reasons why. One of those gut calls, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, I think he's a perfect example of someone who's undervalued right now. Like you said, he's way cheaper than what his talent suggests. Has had a couple rough outings, but I agree with you. The Dodgers may seem like a very intimidating opponent, but if you look at that lineup relative to what it is normally, certainly advantageous for James Shields. And he's pitching in KC at home, and obviously probably more comfortable there. And that's a very tough park to get a home run in, yeah. So that mitigates some of the value that the hitters would have versus him. So I agree with you on him. I think he's a really good option. I echo all your sentiments on Richards. I think, in my eyes, he's the number 1 guy in terms of ceiling, like you said. For floor, he's right there. I do think he's a little more prone to get blown up. Iwakuma's just been so good, and the Vegas line kind of suggests that. And just in Seattle, he gets a nice bump up there. But I agree with you 100%. I think in terms of ceiling, Richards is definitely number 1. Iwakuma and Richards are my two top options, and most of the time you can fit both of them in if you're playing on a multi-position site or multi-pitcher site. So I think they're the two options that you want to consider the most for cash games. Love Shields for tournaments. I think Kluber's another guy like you talked about who's a great tournament play. I wish he wasn't in Arizona, but he's still a guy who can have a great outing and rack up a lot of Ks. Curious your thoughts on some really, really cheap guys. I got two interesting people that I haven't really decided if I'm going to roll out at all if I do multiple lineups, but certainly interesting for cheap. First guy is the Oakland pitcher, assuming that the weather stays fine there. What are your thoughts on him?
I mean, he's a journeyman bullpenner guy, so it's just not somebody I can get behind. I know he's really cheap. I'm not going to go there. The Mets are actually hitting fairly well right now. They've won 5 out of their last 6 games. Obviously, they lit up Kazmir last night. Yeah. And with the weather, I don't think he's worth the risk. Yeah,
I mean, I'm of the same position as Millis, I believe. I remember looking at him initially just with the line so low, and obviously the Mets lit up Kazmir last night, so I figure most people are going to be gun-shy about going back. I know he's not the most talented, and with the weather, I'm pretty much not really going to use him at this point. Initially, I thought I might have some exposure, but he just worries me. Other guy is Pino or whatever for the Twins. He's really only an option for FanDuel where he's 3K. I think that's certainly interesting when you have a pitcher that cheap where you can literally get any batter you want. Would you ever consider that strategy? I know you've done kind of the punt pitching, stack hitters, take the ace pitcher and then take bottom tier hitters. And in general, for GPPs, it works out better to have the cheaper pitcher with the big bat. So curious your thoughts on, absolutely punting the position and only using 3K on someone like Pino.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy on FanDuel. I mean, if he can tread water and get you 12 or something, and if he happens to get a win, just another bonus. Not saying that I think he will tonight, but for 3K, certainly. I mean, there's big bats out there tonight that you can get to. Obviously, we'll get to a lot of those guys, but yeah, I think that's a viable strategy for 3K. I wouldn't do it in 100% of my action, but if it's a GPP and you feel comfortable taking a risk, it's all about your risk tolerance. But I think it's a great strategy for a guy that's 3K. And it's not like he's a 22-year-old rookie. He's been around a long time.
Yeah.
That concerns me some, that he's been in the minors for 8 years, but he looked good in his first start. He had good minor league numbers this year, and for 3K, there's really not a whole lot of downside risk other than if he gets blown up by Kyle Gibson, or blown up by the Angels like Kyle Gibson did last night, then you're probably not going to cash. But it's a risk-reward thing.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page, and like you said, I think he's 30 years old, and he did have good minor league stats, so maybe he figured something out more so than he had in the past. His last 2 AAA starts were really good. And then he put up 12 fantasy points on FanDuel, 7 innings, 7 Ks, 2 earned runs. So he certainly had one good start, and he's capable of it again. And if you want to stack Miguel Cabrera and everyone else, he's certainly a really good option. So I think he's certainly in play over there on FanDuel. And if you want to risk it on a multi-pitcher site, certainly wouldn't hate it either. So let's move forward to some hitting. Catcher's an interesting position tonight. Obviously, we got to monitor the weather for all these plays here, but I think there's a couple good options. I think I don't know if there's a top option. Do you have a top option tonight at catcher?
Not really, because Mesoraco is so expensive now that I wouldn't consider him overly
blowing in too, which is brutal.
It didn't matter last night. I mean, that guy has amazing power. He's homered in 5 straight games now, so. At 4,700 on DraftKings, that's a bit steep for Mesoraco. So I don't think he's a must-play at all. But the problem is every other catcher I try to gravitate to tonight, not in the lineup. Sal Perez, I thought was a decent option because Dan Herron has some reverse split tendencies, but he's not playing tonight. Brian McCann, I thought was a good guy for value. He's not playing tonight. I thought Corcoran might be in there for Houston against the lefty. He's not in there tonight. So that's 3 guys I had to scratch off my list within the last hour. And I'm not opposed to just totally punting catcher tonight. Evan Gattis is not that great against right-handed pitching. So I'm not opposed to just punting and going, with a super cheap option tonight. There's a whole bunch of guys at 2,600 or less that you could gravitate to. To be honest, I think the highest owned guy on DraftKings might be Deanna Navarro, and that's a little bit strange.
Yeah, he's moved up to fifth in the order. That's the catcher I was going to say. I was going to say he's my top catcher, but that doesn't. I mean, Mesoraco probably still earns honors as the top catcher, but like you said, his price is up. And in Wrigley with the wind coming in, I know when he connects, it's just going to be gone regardless, but that still does affect things a little bit for me. Really high Navarro for the price. I think he's going to be heavily owned, like you alluded to. And then there's some other punts, but yeah, it's a pretty weak position overall tonight.
I think you see people on JSO as well against the righty, but.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, and I think the weather will end up being okay there for hitters, but it certainly could not be. I mean, we're showing 50% for a long period of time. That's definitely speculation at this point, so definitely remember to check that out. But I think Jaso would be the next guy would be probably the most heavily owned after Navarro. Do you think people will be on McCann at all tonight?
Well, I was
Or
on
not
him a lot, but he's not playing.
He's on the lineup. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else you want to talk about at catcher?
I think that's about it. I mean, if you're not on a guy like Jaso or Navarro, or you're not paying up for Mesoraco, just pick a punt play down there. There's about 5 or 6 guys at 2,600 or less on DraftKings, so pick the guy you're most comfortable with and roll out a punt. I don't think that's a bad strategy at all tonight.
Yeah, no, totally. So first base, we're moving over there. There is a clear top number one option in my opinion. I think everyone else's, and that's Miguel Cabrera. I've been on him a little bit more recently, and he hasn't really come through, but at some point it seems like he's due for a really big game. Obviously, still probably the best hitter in baseball. I think he's clearly the number one option. You're going to have to pay for him still, but I think the Tigers are going to be a very popular team, and I think he's the number one option on that team.
Yeah, I think the Tigers will be very popular tonight, and with good reason. Joe Saunders always struggles against right-handed bats, and the Tigers have stacked their lineup full of righties tonight. A right-handed heavy lineup 1 through 9. So it's a great strategy against Saunders. I see no way the Tigers don't put up a good amount of runs again tonight. They got 10 on Sunday, 8 last night. And they're just hitting very well right now. In Arlington against Saunders, it's a perfect spot. So I think Cabrera, as you mentioned, the top guy, depending on your site. Victor Martinez right there as well. Amazing splits against left-handed pitching for Victor Martinez. Wrote them in my incentive stuff today. Something like a 475 weighted on base. The numbers are off the charts against left-handed pitching. On FanDuel, I think he's a great option at catcher. I'd even consider paying the $4,500 for him, with catcher being such a thin position. So obviously the 2 Tigers guys are in play. That'll be a theme throughout the show. Love their bats tonight. If you want to target Braves, Colin McHugh's the guy we didn't touch on at pitcher. I've kind of stopped targeting a lot of bats against him because he has pitched well, but he still struggles against lefties. So I think Freddie Freeman's the guy you want from Atlanta if you're going to target any Atlanta bats tonight. And perhaps this could be the night, let's talk about him for just a minute, the night for Brandon Moss to get back on track. His prices come down everywhere. And he's been quiet this month, but the A's have faced a lot of lefties. So now that they finally get a righty, I know Zach Wheeler's been pitching well of late, but to me that price on Brandon Moss is just too good to ignore.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's something, again, I really hope we get some definitive good news on the weather there here later on and kind of just monitoring the forecast. But Moss, totally agree with you. I think he's an elite play anytime he's facing a righty, just with his power upside. And his prices come down, like you said, just because of the recent performance. So after Miguel Cabrera, he might even be my next first baseman. I think he's an elite play. Also like Freeman, like you talked about. I think he's another guy who could have a really nice night. Contrarian play, or not a contrarian play, but I think a guy who has a lot of upside is Ryan Howard against Alvarez. I don't think he'll be as heavily owned. Definitely not an ideal spot. I mean, it's still righty versus lefty, but Alvarez has been pitching a little bit better, and it's not a super high over-under, but Howard has as much homer upside as pretty much everybody. So I still think he's a good, nice contrarian GPP play. And then after that, I struggle. I don't think Goldschmidt's a good play versus Kluber at all. Not really on either first baseman in the Dodgers-Royals game. I'm not using Hosmer, Butler, or Adrian Gonzalez. And then really there's not many other options. I mean, Pujols is interesting if you think the Angels are going to go off again, but I'm kind of gravitating towards those first 2 guys, Miguel Cabrera and Brandon Moss, assuming that the Oakland game goes. Is there even a punt first baseman today? I mean, it's pretty much all these big names. I think you have to spend at first base regardless, unless you play one of the Royals guys, which I can see some people being on them. I just am not as high. I know Hosmer is in a relatively good spot, but I like my first baseman to hit home runs in both those guys. while doing well for the Royals, just haven't shown the same power as these other guys. So your thoughts on the Royals first baseman and then kind of the rest of the position.
Yeah, I'm not on them tonight. Kind of in the same boat as you. And this will go, I mean, this kind of goes with that same theory, but if you want to go cheaper, I would go with Adam Lind. We mentioned
that's a good call.
Kuroda struggling against lefties. So I think Adam Lind at 3,700 would be probably the cheapest I'd go. Maybe Logan Morrison against Buckholes, but I'd prefer Lind if I was just choosing between the two. And you could win a lot of money with this, stumping people with this trivia question. I was totally shocked when I read it, and I don't know where I came across it, but Henderson Alvarez actually leads the major leagues in ERA since May 22nd. It's 0.78 or something like that. Now, I don't expect that to continue. I mean, he still doesn't strike a ton of guys out, which is why I don't think you'll see a whole lot of people on him, and why nobody's really talked about this. But yeah, 0.78 ERA since the end of May for Henderson Alvarez over his last 5 starts. So he's definitely gone under the radar.
I didn't realize that. I mean, I knew, again, why I mentioned Howard as a contrarian plays. I don't think many people are going to be on Phillies bats because he has been effective lately if you look at his game log. Yeah. But, man, a .78 ERA, that's dominant. So I agree with you on Lynn, too. That's someone I should have mentioned. He is, by far, in my opinion, the best, quote-unquote punt play, especially at his price on DraftKings. I think that's very nice value. So it's a stacked position overall tonight. It depends where you want to go, but I certainly think Lind is definitely the best value play now that you bring it up. Any other comments on first base, or are you happy to move to second base and talk about Ian Kinsler?
Ian Kinsler, yeah. There's going to be a whole lot of agreement at second base tonight. Pretty much no doubt about it. Kinsler's kind of made his career killing left-handed pitching. Even if you're a BVP guy, you can get out of this. 12 for 36 with 7 extra base hits, 4 home runs against Saunders. And clearly motivated by facing his former team, blew a kiss to the dugout last night for the Rangers when he hit that first inning home run. And we'd be remiss if we didn't say he's Beermakers fans' beast of the night. So that means it's an automatic home run for Ian Kinsler tonight, because that's just what Beermakers fans' picks are doing these days. So to me, that's Ian Kinsler on a good chunk of my lineups. I can see using Chase Utley as a contrarian play if you want to play the Alvarez card. Had him written down. Don't mind Tommy La Stella as a punt there. He's batting second for Atlanta tonight, and I mentioned McHugh struggles more against left-handed bats. But really a lot of Kinsler tonight. You're going to see an extremely high ownership percentage on him, and I think he has another nice game.
Yeah, I'm 100% on the same page. I'm getting him in every lineup that I can. One other second baseman, probably my favorite player for a tournament, just because I think Kinsler is going to be extremely heavily owned on any site you play, and rightfully so. I think he's the best option. I certainly are going to basically load up on him on cash games. But I think my favorite play outside of him at second base is one I think makes a great GPP play, especially with the park. I think Kipnis is in a really nice spot there in Arizona. So assuming he's in the lineup, I haven't seen their Indians lineup yet, I think he makes a really good tournament play just because everyone's going to be on Kinsler. So it's kind of a nice way to zag when everyone's zigging, but I certainly wouldn't suggest using anyone but Kinsler if you're playing cash games or survivors or whatever else. Any other comments on second baseman, on second base at all cards?
I think that covers it.
All right, shortstop, there's no Tulowitzki, so I have no real analysis to give at the position. I don't think there's too many great options outside of Jose Reyes, to be honest. That's a guy I'm kind of gravitating towards. What are your thoughts on him, and in particular the knee? And then after Jose Reyes, who else do you like at shortstop?
Yeah, the knee is definitely a concern with Reyes. I saw that he got removed from the game on Sunday and said it's nothing to worry about. Well, sorry, Jose, but anything with you that's hurting is something to worry about. So, especially with a guy that derives a lot of value from his legs. I'm on him tonight. I'm not as heavy on him as I would have been without that news. I think there's a couple different ways you can go. I think one is Asdrubal Cabrera, mentioned the park bump for Cleveland. And if you look at Anderson, the pitcher for Arizona, actually some pretty alarming reverse splits this year. I think righties are hitting 370 against him, lefties like 220. It's a pretty small sample size. I'd expect that to even out. So I still do like Kipnis at second base as a GPP play along with you. But I certainly could see some value in going with the few right-handed bats that the Indians do have. So Cabrera at short, a thin position. If you don't want to risk Reyes, I think Cabrera is a solid option. We haven't mentioned another high-scoring game tonight, that White Sox game against Baltimore with Noesi and Ubaldo Jimenez pitching. That could get ugly one way or the other. Both of those guys capable of getting lit up. So Chris Davis would be another option at first base. And I think at shortstop you could totally punt with J.J. Hardy, who finally hit a home run. He's been hitting a little better of late. Or you could go to the other side of that game and go with Alexei Ramirez. I think both of those guys are nice lower-cost options. But I think I might end up with a little bit more exposure to Cabrera than Reyes, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, I like Cabrera as well. I think he's the other option. I think he's the number 2. And then after that, it gets ugly so fast. And I agree with you on Reyes. He'd be an auto play for me right now, especially with his price, which has come down, which I still think he has a lot of value overall. But for someone who has elite steal potential like he does when he's healthy, to know that he's kind of hurt, I don't think they're going to push him, and I don't think he is as likely to steal as he would normally be. So that kind of brings me down on him. And then after that, I mean, I can kind of agree with you on everyone, but I just am not excited really about anyone at shortstop outside of Cabrera. I think he's a good option getting that park bump there. So shortstop's another thin position tonight. I think there's just kind of those couple guys you can plug in. I guess Lowry would be an option, but again, we got to make sure that weather's in play, which is a big theme because I do think there is some value in that lineup. Let's move to third base if you're not. Or go ahead, you had a comment?
No, I was just going to, you mentioned Tulowitzki there. It sparked my interest. Did you go to any of this series with the Cardinals out there or not?
No, it's tough, and I wanted to. I was going to go today, but then I had to do some family stuff. But Tuesday night, I was planning on going, and my tickets that I normally get were already swooped up, so I didn't get to go down there, and that's a compliment to you. The Cardinals travel really, really well. So even during the weekdays, normally everything's good to go for me. I just cruised down there, got my tickets. I had to go out of my way, and I ended up playing golf instead. So I love going to Cardinals games normally because the fans are so good, but didn't get to make it out there, which was kind of a bummer. So those games would have been a lot of fun. It would have been fun to go to a game with you even out here because obviously the Coors Field games are more entertaining, especially from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, no doubt. The wife and I want to get out to Denver at some point. So at some point, maybe next year or something, we'll take you up on that offer and come out there for a game. I'd like to go to a game there. Obviously, different stadiums. I've been to, I think, 5 or 6 different stadiums, but Denver's a place we want to get to and be a fun experience out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You should definitely take me up on it. I love coming out. That's an open offer to anybody who comes out to Colorado. I definitely always want to go to games, and it's always fun to see. I got to see EMAC, who I know you're close with Cards, and it's a really good time. So if anyone's ever out in Colorado, any Colorado listeners, I love going to those games, and it really is amazing, like just living in Denver for that fact only, just because obviously I'm really into fantasy baseball and all that stuff, and you can go to the game and basically stack up those players, and it's actually not a bad strategy. So it's a lot of fun. But let's move to third base. If you're not playing Miguel Cabrera at third base in DraftKings, where do you go, Cards?
That's a good call. I think there's 4 options at third base. I think there's Cabrera if you want to put him there. If you still want to spend, but you can't spend quite that much, I think you go to David Wright against that Oakland lefty. Wright's been hitting a lot better lately, and definitely hits better against left-handed pitching. So I think he's there. A little bit expensive for my taste, though, with his production. I mean, just 6 homers on the year, 4,500 is a bit steep, but I can see it if you want to go there. Otherwise, I think you've got some puntable options with upside. You've got Dominguez, who hits better against left-handed pitching against Alex Wood. He's probably more of a GPP option. He's hit or miss at times. He can certainly have an 0-for-4 game. But a guy I think a lot of people will be on tonight, continuing that theme of Tigers bats, is Nick Castellanos. 3,300, amazing numbers in the minor leagues against left-handed pitching, and gets to go up against Joe Saunders tonight. I think it's the perfect low-cost play. For that price tag, you really can't beat it. And he's also outfield eligible on DraftKings. So if you want to play Miguel Cabrera at first base or at third base and Castellanos at outfield, you can do that. I think he'll be relatively highly owned tonight with the price tag.
Yeah, I agree with you on all that. Wish Castellanos would bat higher in the lineup, but that lineup's just stacked, and I agree with you completely. He's nice and cheap over on FanDuel, nice and cheap on DraftKings, so he's an elite play. Agree with you on David Wright. Again, we're kind of waiting on this game. To be honest, that's the big thing. So I'll be watching at 6:45 again to see what the weather analysis is there, because it just looks like continuous rain for a long time. There are a couple pockets there, but It's definitely extremely risky from the pitching perspective. I would not touch either pitcher, but hitters, like we mentioned, it could be some risk there. I think you hit on pretty much everyone that I'm on at third base. Kind of some thin options around each position, except for a couple, just because there's some pretty good pitchers in some spots and then absolutely awful pitchers in other spots. So we're kind of targeting the same games and the same players from those games. So it's going to be interesting to see how the ownership breaks down today and just how teams shake out. So definitely some value. I think today is more of a day than any other day that I've been around that you can really gain some value being contrarian. And I know you did that really well to start the season. As a tournament guy, do you kind of see that like today? Does it feel like one of those days?
It does. It's unfortunate that I'm so high on the Tigers tonight. I think it's risky. But if the Tigers only score 2 runs tonight and you're not on them, you have a leg up on everybody else. Now, you'll be biting your nails throughout that whole Tigers game, hoping that Joe Saunders doesn't blow up.
It seems inevitable, but it could happen. It's baseball.
Yeah, I do that oftentimes with the games in Coors Field. It usually doesn't work, but when it does, it pays off pretty handsomely. So, but you're going through that whole game saying, please, let's just get through another inning. Let's get through another inning. And the other night, on DraftKings, I knew he was going to be so highly owned. I faded Matt Adams in the entries that I did have, and I won nothing because Matt Adams went bananas. Yep. And that's the risk that you take. So if you don't want Victor Martinez or Miguel Cabrera tonight or Ian Kinsler, it's a calculated risk, but it's one that can pay off for you if the Tigers are quiet or they only score 3 runs or something like that. Tonight is probably not a night that I will end up doing it. I'll have a lot of exposure to Detroit, but that's not saying it's going to work. Baseball has its own variance from game to game, night to night. And, the Tigers could get shut down. The factors are in their favor, but that doesn't guarantee anything.
Yeah, no, that's great analysis and, something that, a lot of us are thinking about, especially when it comes to tournaments. I'm high on the Tigers, too, and it's just one of those things, that there's so much short-term variance in baseball that if the team that the crowd's on doesn't do well, you're going to be positioned so well. And we've seen that be extremely successful. It can go up in flames, like you said. If the Tigers score 10 runs, you're going to be screwed. But in the event that they don't score many runs, you're just positioned so well to have a big night. So definitely some good analysis there on GPPs. Let's move to the most fun position tonight, outfield. This is the one position that has options. I think there's a variety of different options. I think the Tigers outfield collectively are going to be the most heavily owned guys. I really like Rajai Davis in particular batting leadoff. Talk to me about those guys and then kind of your favorite plays after the Tigers outfielders.
Yeah, I think they're superb plays tonight, especially you mentioned Rajai Davis leading off. I also love J.D. Martinez tonight. He's been raking lately. I'd put those two head and shoulders above an aging Torrey Hunter who really hasn't done a whole lot and is also more expensive. And Castellanos in that boat as well. I would put ahead of Hunter. So if there's one Tiger that I would be a little lukewarm on tonight, it'd be Hunter. So watch him be the one that gets 2 homers. But I think they're all great plays. Obviously, if you want to fit any of those guys in, you can. There's some punt plays out there, but there's just so many value guys available in that $3,500 to $4K range on DraftKings. That's kind of where I find myself gravitating towards. Love Cole Calhoun in that leadoff spot for the Angels. I think he's still too cheap. I really like Adam Eaton tonight as well, especially on FanDuel where I believe he's 27 or 2,800. In the leadoff spot against Ubaldo Jimenez, who walks a lot of guys, I think Eaton's a fine play. Josh Hamilton's price has come down a little bit lately, so I think he's solid. And then don't forget on DraftKings that you can use Brandon Moss in the outfield as well if you want to. We already mentioned Castellanos you can use in the outfield. I think it's a night to go with a few mid to high-end outfielders as opposed to the studs. Obviously, if you want to roster Mike Trout, go ahead. But I find myself kind of with a lot of outfielders in that $3,500 to $4,500 range on DraftKings tonight. Just seems to be where most of the players that I like are. Even the Yankees lefties, Gardner and Ellsbury, I think are in great spots as well.
Yeah, no, totally. I definitely like both the Yankees guys, and I'm also I think there's value in the Braves guys only for upside. I think Colin McHugh is an interesting subject. I know I was definitely surprised at his initial success. He definitely has the potential, has some nasty stuff, but I've been expecting him to normalize, and he's starting to a little bit, and I do think that the Braves can definitely string together some home runs, especially in those outfield positions. So big fan of Hayward, big fan of Justin Upton for GPPs. Not as much cash games just because they both strike out so much, and McHugh could get hot. So there's some other guys I think are interesting. I agree with you on the Tigers. I think Raji Davis is number one. I also love JD Martinez. He's been swinging a really hot bat. Definitely have them above Hunter. Outside of that, I like Markakis as well for Baltimore. I think the Baltimore bats are a really good spot. And I agree with you on Eaton as well. I think he's another guy who batting leadoff gets a lot of value against Ubaldo, who just has, really, really kind of regressed to the pitcher that I didn't think he was going to be this bad. I knew that in Colorado he had elite stuff. I mean, I knew he had control issues, but when he was throwing strikes, it was basically unhittable. Just nasty movement, really, really good stuff. And now he's just not a good pitcher. So
you know who comes to mind for me when I think of him? He's not a starter, but Carlos Marmol comes to mind. It's just a guy who just fell off. I mean, with Carlos Marmol, when he was with the Cubs, he always had command issues, but you could not hit his slider. You just couldn't hit it. You're better off just taking it and hoping he walks you. And then, as the years went by, it lost his command more and more, and it's just, he's, I believe, a free agent right now. But the way Ubaldo's pitching, he's heading down that path as well.
Yeah, no, totally. And I couldn't see it coming. I actually have an autographed Ubaldo plaque, which I thought was going to be cool when he threw that no-hitter, which was a funny no-hitter. I think he had like 5 or 6 walks, maybe even more walks in that game that he threw a no-hitter. But that was kind of the nature of it. And Marble's a great comparison. I mean, he was nasty. He'd rack up a bunch of saves. Everyone would kind of make you sweat. That was back when I was playing season long. He'd walk the bases loaded with no outs and then strike out the side. He was just absolutely ridiculous. But now he just, I don't know what happened. He completely fell off. So I agree with you on all the outfielders. Any punt plays? If you had to punt the position completely, I know we talked about some guys who are cheap on FanDuel. Who are your favorite punt plays in the outfield?
It's tough because if you want to play A.J. Burnett's wildness, I think Jake Marisnick might make a decent option for the Marlins, but the weather concerns me in that game. I think Endy Chavez leading off for the Mariners is probably where I go. He's 2,600.
Yep.
It's probably as good of a punt as I'll get to tonight. That's Inciarte is leading off for Arizona as well, but they have to face Kluber, so I'll probably lean towards Chavez leading off against Clay Buchholz.
Yeah, I think that's a nice one. And is it Marisnick? I don't know how to pronounce it. I played him a couple times just in that leadoff spot.
I gotta plug in my laptop here just a sec. Okay. I accidentally left it on my battery.
All right, so while Card's just stepping out there for a second, I'll just kind of go through all the picks that we talked about initially. Pitcher, both of us are high on Richards is the highest ceiling guy, but Iwakuma probably the highest floor. Catcher, we're both on Navarro, it sounds like, as a good play. Mesoraco's certainly hot, another option. First base, Miguel Cabrera, Brandon Moss. Second base, Kinsler. Some other options, shortstop, Reyes and Cabrera. Third base, if you're not using Cabrera, David Wright's an elite option, assuming that game goes. And then we talked about the Tigers outfielders and some other guys in the outfield. So feel free to fire up some questions. I'm going to pull up the Star Street Pick 5 here, assuming it is up.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I'll talk about something for just a second. I've been testing this over the last couple of nights, and it's worked pretty well. A lot of us used to use like weather.com or whatever in the Futurecast to try to figure out when it was going to start raining. And those never worked very well. So in addition to Kevin's forecasts, I've pulled up this AccuWeather website. And AccuWeather now has a minute cast. Yep. You can click on minute cast, and it'll pretty much tell you exactly when it's going to start raining, and you can refresh it every minute. So what I've done right now, I pulled up the radar for Flushing, New York, where Citi Field is located at, and clicked on minute cast, and it tells me right on my phone here, rain will start in 87 minutes. And so if I refresh it right now, it's been about 2 minutes since I've refreshed it last. It says rain will start in 86 minutes. So that keeps on refreshing, and it shows you the radar right below it. And that line of storms that's getting ready to head towards Philadelphia, Baltimore, and New York, it's kind of expanding, and it looks like there's some storms that are also popping up behind it. So at this moment, if the rain starts 86 minutes from now in New York, That's 7:30 Eastern time, so it's like a half an hour after the game starts. And I mean, that band seems to be expanding, so I'm very interested to see what Kevin's going to have to say on this topic. But as of now, I'm very, very concerned about the East Coast games in Philadelphia, Baltimore, and New York, and would be leaning towards getting everybody out of my lineups for those games, maybe even batters as well. It's a very tough call tonight, but you might want to, in the end, play it safe, because to me, the way the rain is expanding and the fact that it's going to start in about an hour and a half is like the worst possible time. So we could see some issues tonight.
Yeah, definitely some issues. One other thing that I initially wasn't as concerned about, but this weather just looks brutal. And when the weather's brutal, there's nothing else. I was initially feeling okay about the hitters just because it's an interleague game, and generally they're more prone to try to get those in regardless. But the weather looks brutal, and that's a great tip on using AccuWeather. There's a variety of different sources, and definitely you can utilize all of them to kind of get a consensus. I think Kevin does about as good a job as anybody, especially when it comes to what we're looking for with the baseball games. So we got Pick 5 and the Draft Day Rapid Fire up. So first one, two Tigers versus each other. This is interesting because both these guys are just lefty mashers. Ian Kinsler versus Victor Martinez. Where are you going?
Yeah, that's a great one. You know, that's awesome that they did that, put those two against each other. I'll take Kinsler tonight. I just love the matchup, and Kinsler has a little bit more in terms of ways to derive value than Martinez does in terms of his speed, because V-Mart got thrown out at home in the first inning last night, and man, he's just slow. Kinsler can get you a double or triple, or if a guy comes in relief, a righty, even get you a steal or two, and has similar power. So I'll give Kinsler the higher floor there and take him.
Yeah, totally with you. I'm 100% on the same page. Love Kinsler tonight. This one's so close for me, though, because Victor Martinez has been, I don't know what happened. He's always been an elite hitter, but this year he is just absolutely raking, not striking out at all. And I don't know. With the walk factor, I mean, these are two of the guys I think are the highest projected players overall. I'll go Kinsler just because he's my favorite play overall tonight, but I certainly could see the merit for going Victor. And Victor is averaging more fantasy points per game than Kinsler at this point in the season. So that's very tough for me. It's a true coin flip, but I'll go Kinsler. Encarnacion versus Jose Abreu.
Boy, two guys we didn't touch on. I would say at this point I'm going to lean towards that being free money and take Encarnacion and hope Abreu gets rained out.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing on the next one, too. We got David Wright versus Kyle Seager. I definitely prefer Wright, but at this point I'd go Seager just because the extra factor that he might not play.
Yeah, same here. I love Wright, but Seager's a nice pivot around the same price tag. I think he's $600 cheaper on DraftKings if you're going to be in scrambling mode to edit lineups.
Okay, Josh Hamilton versus Adam Jones.
I'll take Hamilton even regardless of the rain. I like his upside tonight. He's hitting for average, which is something he usually doesn't do. I think his average is over 320, and his price has come down on a lot of sites. So even ignoring the rain in Baltimore, I'll take Hamilton.
Yeah, I'm definitely on Hamilton. Someone I didn't talk about enough. I really like him tonight overall in the outfield. Stanton versus Cruz. What are your thoughts there?
Don't like Cruz against the righty. I'll take Stanton. Well, weather's going to be an issue in both of those games, so you can't factor the weather in there. But I would just like Stanton overall regardless, and the fact that Cruz is facing a righty makes that a little easier.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. What do you think is the weather? I mean, I know it's kind of all the same storms. Right now, I just saw the Miami forecast, and it does look a little bit better potentially. I'm not seeing nearly the risk in that game. I don't know if I'm missing something there, but I do think Philadelphia is a little bit better off than the Baltimore game.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's and that's also a little bit farther west, so you get the chance that it moves through there a little bit faster. But definitely tune into that forecast.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's gonna be beneficial today for sure. All right, so that's the Star Street one there. You can still win trips to the Playboy Mansion that way. A lot of cool different things going on over there with the perfect pick 5 and whatnot as well. On draft day, we have Miguel Cabrera versus Mike Trout. I'm taking Cabrera, no question.
Yeah.
Freddie Freeman versus Josh Hamilton.
That's a good one. I like Hamilton tonight, and I like Freeman too. I'll stick with Hamilton, but that one's really, really close.
Yeah, that's close. I like Hamilton there. I do think Freeman is a nice play, especially in this format. versus Hamilton, but I do think Hamilton's matchup's a little bit better, and I do like the Angels overall to score some runs. Billy Hamilton versus Jose Reyes.
I'll take Reyes.
You don't like Billy Hamilton
No,
cards?
I have to admit, Billy Hamilton has been nothing short of fantastic since the month of April. He looks a lot better at the plate, looks a lot more comfortable, seems to have the jitters out. So I have completely halted my hatred for Billy Hamilton. You know, that's more of a division
swing, though,
rival
was
thing.
brutal. I remember that swing that he took, which was literally the worst swing I've seen all year. No question about it. Yeah, I know. And I think this is just more of a case of a really, really elite athlete kind of figuring it out. I mean, he doesn't have to hit the ball the same way everyone else does. I mean, if he can put the ball on the ground, just anywhere on the ground, he gives himself a shot. So certainly he's not an elite hitter by any stretch, but he's an elite player just given how much of a good athlete he is, particularly with the legs. I'm going to go Jose Reyes, too. I like Toronto more than I like Cincinnati today, but that's close. Billy Hamilton obviously can get on any different way, and he's much more likely to steal tonight than Jose Reyes. Adam Lind versus David Wright.
I'll take Lind. I like his upside tonight, and again, concerned about the weather in New York.
Yeah, if you guys want, you might be able to print some money here if the weather goes south. I know that's not good for your lineups necessarily, but might be able to take advantage of the pick 5 and the rapid fire with the weather issues, and definitely get those in sooner rather than later because they might be changing right now. Last one is Anthony Rizzo versus Carlos Beltran.
Tough matchup for Rizzo tonight. I know he's been raking lately, but with the wind blowing in and Latos on the mound for Cincinnati, I'll lean towards Beltran. Not really a fan of either one of those guys tonight, but I'll take Beltran there.
Yeah, I have zero exposure to both guys, but oh man, I'll take Beltran just because I think he's in a more conducive environment to hit, like you mentioned.
Did you just? This is the first I've seen of it. I mean, Tim Lincecum just threw a no-hitter. Did you know that?
Yeah, I just was saying in the chat. That's amazing. He is good for Tim Lincecum. He's
of course, it was against the Padres, but hey, he threw a no-hitter.
Hey, and that's that. We do know how bad the Padres are, which is another really frustrating thing about last night. I know a lot of us got burned, but Kazmir and Hudson, I don't know how both those guys didn't have good pitching performances. Combined for 1 point on DraftKings if you had them both, which I did multiple times. So if it tells us anything, though, if you can pick on the Padres. We're now here at 6:30 Eastern time. Definitely check out the weather at 6:45. Cards, I know you were kind of a late-minute scratch here, a late-minute replacement here today, so I appreciate you coming on. I know you had some work-related stuff, so definitely awesome that you came on and filled in. Dan Bach is a little under the weather, so doing a little bit of scrambling, and it was definitely fun to do the show. Any last comments?
No, just be sure to check out that weather forecast. Best of luck tonight, and as always, thanks for watching and listening, and we'll talk to y'all later.
Later, guys.